Hello everyone, Damien here with a quick guide to Nurburgring. A very difficult track with lots of coasting and some dangerous curbs. It's basically all about carrying as much speed as you possibly can through those long corners and take all the curbs you can without crashing. This will not be a perfect hot lap, it never is, but it will show you what the track limits are and how to approach those corners. So for T1 we go as wide as we possibly can, braking just after 100 meter board. We slowly turn in as we want to hit the apex as soon as possible. Don't be afraid to brake a lot, this is a very slow corner. You can take the curb on the inside, but only with the inside wheels. Otherwise there will be lift and you will most likely spin when you go on throttle. The post, you can see, is a very good marker as long as it's there. Use as much track as you need on the left. The entry for the next corner is not all that important. To prepare ourselves for T2, we don't go too wide to the right, just go about halfway through. That's enough to get a good entry. Most important thing to remember about this corner is to not brake too much and carry as much speed as you possibly can. You can see on my hot lap I'm not really braking through that corner, just small corrections. Keep it very tight and go on power as soon as we possibly can. This is a corner where your exit is still while turning, so many of those corners are like this and it tends to get oversteery, so be careful with steering. Try to keep it as straight as possible so you don't oversteer and you don't have to make too many corrections. So early on the power, use as much curb on the right as you possibly can. You can go pretty much off track as long as your inner wheels touch that curb. For T3 and T4 we brake just before the green tarmac on the right disappears from our sight. We do keep it tight again, and again we carry as much speed as we possibly can. Don't brake too much, don't use the throttle while going through the corner. That means you have done something wrong and need to do unnecessary corrections. So as you can see on my hot lap, I didn't really brake or accelerate, I just rolled through the majority of the corner. Once I knew I can, I short shifted to second, went on the power and prepared myself for T4. The exit from T4 is very important to get right, so we don't immediately go for the apex. We go just a little bit forward and then turn in. We lift for the turn in for the car to rotate and go full throttle as we hit the apex. We do want to take a lot of that curb, so be careful because your car will jump, and this is again a scenario where you can snap oversteer. So be very careful with the steering. You can see I was already counter steering here to not spin, which is not a perfect scenario, but just shows how careful you have to be. Use all the track you can on the outside. Remember, it's just your inner wheels that have to be inside the track limits. For T5, or technically T6, we go as far to the right as we can, again even off the track, as long as we don't hit the grass. We brake just after the service road to the right. We do turn in relatively quickly, because if we don't, there is a little bump on the outside that would just send you straight to the grass. So to avoid it, we turn in relatively quickly. Again, don't brake too much, carry as much speed as you possibly can through the corner. Go on throttle after you hit the apex and prepare for the right-hander. Now to prepare for the right-hander we don't really have to do much. We don't have to go all the way to the left. This is again a longer corner, so you will carry some speed through it anyway. So we brake just as we can see the curb on the right disappearing. Not braking too much, keeping it very tight, short shifting to the second gear and going on the power as soon as possible. Again, still steering while accelerating, so we need to watch out for the oversteer. This is partially why we short shift to second. Again, take all the curb to the outside, just don't hit the sand. This will absolutely kill your lap time. For the Dunlop Corner, it's pretty hard to get a good reference. I use the sand patch you can see on the left just as I can see it. I basically start braking. For the front engine cars, I usually treat this as a double apex corner. So I go straight for the corner immediately. So a quick entry for the first apex. Carry as much speed as we can, don't brake too much, short shift to second, and try to go on throttle as soon as you can. As you can see, I'm going on throttle even before hitting the second apex. Once again, very oversteery on that corner, so be careful with your steering input. Use all the curb to the outside to help you with getting a good exit. For the Schumi S's, we mount the curb on the outside. And then, while turning in, we slightly lift. Now this is very important, there is no braking in the Schumi S's. If you use the brake, you have done something very wrong. So you can use the curb on the inside to aid your turning, especially in a BMW, Bentley, Aston, AMG. And not so much in a McLaren, for example. So you can use the curb to aid your turning, but ideally you wouldn't. In this case I did, which helped me to keep it basically full throttle from the first apex. Feel free to use the curb on the right here, just be careful and do not touch the sand. This will invalidate your lap and kill your lap time. You can use the curb on the outside on the exit of Schumi S's. It's a difficult curb, it's a pretty slippery curb, so be careful when using it, even on the dry if you turn too much. The next corner is pretty difficult. Again, it is all about keeping as much speed through the corner as you can. So we go all the way to the right, we brake just before the 100 meter board, shifting down all the way to second, using all the curb on the inside and carrying as much speed as you can. You can brake less than you initially think on majority of corners on Nurburgring. Now go to the outside, use the curb, just don't use too much. First of all, it's slippery. Second of all, you need to set up for the next corner. So use it, but don't use too much of it. For the right-hander, sweep all the way to the left. Your brake marker will be roughly where you can see the white line fade, and there's not much braking to that corner anyway. So we brake a little, we shift to second, and we let the engine do the braking, and we coast through the corner, and as we hit the apex we go full throttle. Use the curb on the outside again, don't touch the sand. The T13 is obviously full throttle. Just remember to try and make it a corner where you steer as little as possible. The more you steer, the more speed you will lose. Now for the most difficult part of the track, so the chicane just before the last corner. Very hard to do right, very hard to maintain speed and use the curbs to their full potential. Now it's easier in the BMW than it is in the McLaren because you can take the curbs, but nonetheless you have to be very careful. So for the chicane we brake just before the 50 meter board all the way to third. Now for the first curb we do want to take it, but don't take too much. Try to avoid this little curb with the post on it. This will upset your car severely, causing you maybe to spin, but at the very least lose time and control of the car. So use the curb, but don't use it too much. For the second curb in the BMW, you can just ignore it and go right through it. You don't even have to have your wheels on the track. So as you can see, my wheels were barely touching the curb, the inside wheels, and I was still fine. We do it to make the chicane as straight as possible. The less we turn, the more speed we can carry through, and the quicker we go through this nightmare of a chicane. And as we keep it straight, it is easier to get a good exit. We obviously want to go full throttle as we leave the chicane. So it's very easy to spin if we mount the curb while turning. So if we are going straight, it is much easier. For the last corner, coming all the way from the outside, you can use the curb freely. We brake just before the patch of sand to the left. I have to say, pretty late entry corner. So we do turn in quite late, and again, carry as much speed as you can. Don't brake too much. You can see I did some corrections, but I mostly let the car roll through it. And as I was not that much further than halfway through the corner, I was already on full throttle. So very quickly. This is essential as we have our pit straight ahead of us and we don't want to lose time or basically get overtaken. So we need a good exit. So try to carry as much speed as you can and go on throttle as soon as you can. And this is yet another scenario where we go on throttle while turning. So again, careful with your inputs, with your steering inputs. Use all the curb on the outside. Don't be afraid of it. Just don't touch the sand. Alright, so that was it. A lap around Nurburgring. Thank you for watching. Let me guys know what you think. And you can now finally have a look at the hot lap at full speed without me talking. See you later.